Welcome to Wine Soundtrack South Africa. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world. In 30 answers, discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Morena Kalo, and today I'm joined by Coenie Snyman from Rock of Eye Wines. Coenie, a very warm welcome. Can you please tell me a little bit more about yourself?
Thank you very much for having me, Morena, and to the listeners. I'm just a guy that grew up in Stellenbosch and grew up in the wine business and has been making wine for the last 30 odd years and has just started my own brand, Rock of Eye Wines.
Nice. So, Coenie, Rock of Eye, you explained this to me in a recent meeting that we had. How did you get to this, the name? There's definitely a really clever thinking behind this brand.
Firstly, we were looking for a brand that could transcend just winemaking, having kids and family and potentially use a brand that can play across different sectors. So that meant Snyman Wines was off the charts. But Snyman translates into cutman, tailor, Schneider, Suntory. And if you dig down the rabbit hole of tailoring, when you walk into a classic old tailor and he can make you your suit that fits perfectly without even measuring you, that skill is called Rock of Eye. And for me, that is a brand name that can work both ways. It's aspirational for young people. And then I also think that everybody in their own industry develops that so-called Rock of Eye.
I think it's such a clever play on words, and it really appealed to me when you told me the story. So that's really great. Okay, so what is your business model? Do you own vineyards? Do you buy in grapes? Where do your grapes come from, and is there a specific regional focus whatsoever?
I grew up in Stellenbosch. I went to school in Stellenbosch. I studied in Stellenbosch, and I've been in wine business in Stellenbosch for the last 30 years. So I decided to base my business in Stellenbosch. So I buy grapes from a couple of different producers. Most of them were at school with me. So and then I rent a winery in Stellenbosch up the beautiful Eikendal Road, right on the slopes of the Helderberg Mountain. Beautiful space.
It is a beautiful space, and I was surprised we had a little walkthrough just so that I could familiarize myself with the cellar space and where we are located. It's got, apparently, on a clear day, the most spectacular views to both sides. You can see both sides of the peninsula, which is fantastic. But tell me a little bit about your wine. It's very specific what you're doing, and you want to keep it focused.
At this stage, I want to keep it focused, but I also want to keep it a balanced portfolio. So when starting a new business, I said I wanted a white wine, I wanted a lighter style red, and then I want a bigger style red. And I've been fortunate enough to work with two single vineyard, a Chenin Blanc and a Cinsault in Stellenbosch, that just delivered fantastic quality, and that was a natural choice for me to bottle that under my own label. And then with Cabernet, I said I wanted to express Stellenbosch as an area. So I buy different vineyards from the Simonsberg, Helderberg, Polka Dry, and blend that into Rock of Eye Cab.
I think, it's really special that you're really focusing on especially Cab from Stellenbosch. There's very much a focus. You speak to Stellenbosch producers and they feel something. There's something really special when it comes to Cab from this area. And where you are located here, you're sitting between some pretty famous neighbors. What is it about Cabernet from Stellenbosch that makes it so special?
I think there's a lot of tradition in Stellenbosch, specifically on Cabernet, and it's the first real, call it international, relevant variety that became a focus in South Africa. And for that reason, I think the first plantings in Stellenbosch were done on the best soils. And Stellenbosch has got a really wonderful climate actually to ripen Cabernet. And I think internationally, I think that's very important to get the right flavors and stay away from too green. But then we also have the ability to create harmony and balance. The structures of the soils in Stellenbosch also give us the opportunity to make wines that show a bit of structure and tannin and boldness. Although that is probably getting less important in the modern world of wine. But then as winemakers, we can try and adapt to these conditions.
I think adapting is absolutely key in this industry these days, and it's not an easy thing to do when we're farming with grapes, specific varieties. It's not just a case of, let's just change it up very quickly for next harvest. So there's definitely ways and means of doing it, and one has to stay open to this. But coming to you,
there's obviously a lot of tradition in the wine world, and there's a lot of people that just keep doing what they're doing, and that's their business model and brand plan. I mean, for myself, I want to keep focusing on these three varieties and then specifically Cab. So there's a little bit of focus, but I do think that you need to stay, as I always say, internationally relevant if you want to be successful in the wine business.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You have to remain relevant. You have to remain consumer-centric to a point. You have to stay true to yourself and to what you want to achieve in your vineyards and in your cellar, but there needs to be a little bit of movement, albeit sometimes somewhat tricky. So, Stellenbosch, born, bred, raised, studied, you name it. You grew up in the winelands, essentially. Is there a moment in time that you kind of started to look at wine and think, ooh, this is something interesting? Or was there a seminal moment like that?
My father worked on the wine farms in Stellenbosch, and as a primary school kid, I went to a lot of different wine farms, and I looked at these wineries that were absolutely ancient, and I thought to myself that this business needs to be renewed, and I actually wanted to design wineries when I left school. And my first year I studied engineering, and then I realized, but I didn't know you could actually study winemaking. Because everybody that made wine owned their own properties, and I don't own a property, so I thought it might be pretty cool to rather build them. But then I ended up joining this ancient industry and just become part of the furniture.
And you really did become part of the furniture in certainly in your previous role at Rust & Vrede, where you were for quite a number of years, and I think that's possibly where a lot of our listeners will kind of go, oh yes, that's where I know the name from. Is it a big difference going from a business that is established with all that history to now creating your own, and what are I'm assuming there must have been moments of like, oh my God, what have I done? But what have the good things been, or the things that maybe you didn't think of necessarily that have come to light?
Primarily, I think the biggest difference is making your own decisions and be completely responsible for them. And that applies from setting up a business through I wouldn't even call what I do marketing and winemaking, through the whole package. That you make those decisions and you live and die by them. And yeah, maybe I don't sleep as well as I used to, but there's a lot of satisfaction in what I do. For me, it was just time to do it. And I had the opportunity, and I'm very grateful for the position I'm in. I'm just starting to sell wine, so it's quite exciting to see that there's a bit of movement.
That is an exciting time to see the shipments going out and people collecting boxes or cases or crates or whatever it may be. What is your opinion on wine scoring competitions, critics, that kind of thing? Do you think there's a place? And what should the strategy be behind entering your wines into these kinds of things?
Wine competitions, to a large degree, for me, is a very convenient money-making scheme for a lot of people. So there's very little value for me in paying to enter my wine into a competition. There are obviously the exceptions to that, where it is absolutely dedicated to a specific purpose, and I'm grateful for those opportunities. But then there's a lot of tastings, scoring systems where it's not a paid for, where it's done for a specific purpose, and I see a lot more value in that. To be internationally relevant, you need a score, even maybe a local score from South Africa, and definitely international score. So it's very difficult to sell wine today while you try to keep a secret that nobody knows how good it is.
Yeah, I think you make a very valid point, and especially probably more so for young and up-and-coming brands who want to get the name out, to use it as an opportunity to not only benchmark but position yourself within the bigger picture and within the marketplace. You make three wines. Right now, we've just been down into your cellar, but right now, with what is in your cellar, not in bottle, what is exciting you? Is it the Chenin, the Cinsault, or the Cab that's kind of tickling you?
Actually, the most exciting thing is I tasted at the Cape Winemakers Guild auction selection this morning, and managed to get my auction selection Cab onto the auction for the Cape Winemakers Guild, which is obviously fantastic, but that is now in the bottle. And then I'm always partial to the Cabernet, but just from a exciting point of view, I think the Cinsault has really tickled my fancy, and I haven't worked with Cinsault so directly in the past, so it's actually quite nice to see that there's a lot of potential in that grape variety.
I agree. It almost, it's like a forgotten variety, or has been for so many years, and now people are really kind of turning their gaze to that variety and realizing that actually it's got so much to give. It's very, very exciting. As a consumer, what do you enjoy drinking?
Anything that is good. I do drink a lot of Chenin. As I always say, Sundays are my Chardonnay and Pinot Noir days, because probably I can't afford to drink them for the rest of the week. Shiraz for me is probably the most exciting wine consuming category because of the diversity in styles, and Cabernet is still the heartthrob for me, but there's always a place for a bit of champagne. There's always a place for really exciting foreign wines. Yeah.
Fair enough. So I'll be very presumptive here. I'm going to assume that you might have had, on occasion, a little bit too much to drink. Do you have a hangover cure that you can share with us, or something that works for you to help you the next day?
Prevention is definitely the best cure in this case, and technically, apparently the only gear. According to the British research, they say the best gear is 2 beers. According to the American research, it says don't drink at all. And obviously I'm firmly kind of in between these two categories, but I like to see myself as a balanced wine consumer.
Listen up, youngsters. That's the way to go about it. So, some people...
Maybe the best gear is just drink expensive enough that you can't afford to drink too much.
I like that one. That's a clever one. That's very clever. But then again, if you've got something really special open, you want to finish the whole lot because, you don't want it to go to waste.
Yeah, but that's not a problem. One bottle can't give you a hangover, that's for sure.
I love it. Okay, so some people read tea leaves in the bottom of their teacup to see what the future holds. If you could read what the sediment at the bottom of your red wine glass were to tell you about the future for Rock of Eye wines, what would it say?
Sold out.
Good answer. Very good answer. I like that a lot. Sold out. That's that would be perfect. And then, when you were little, what did little Coenie want to be when he grew up?
I don't actually had I can't remember in that sense, because all I know, I grew up in the wine business and was not really fascinated by too many things, but I enjoyed the engineering side of things, and maybe later in life, high school, early university, I really enjoyed traveling,
Okay. Speaking of traveling, in our industry, it's a wonderful perk of the job that we get to travel so much. On your travels, have you come across any wines along the way that have either completely blown you away with how amazing they are, or alternatively wines that have kind of shocked you, where you had this massive expectation only to be hugely let down? Are there any of these kinds of instances you could share with us?
As you say, we're very privileged and we get to see a lot of things. And the fantastic thing about the wine industry, it doesn't matter where you travel in the world, you meet fantastic people. And in those instances, those wines always show well. There's obviously the exception to the rule, but in general, I've just had really, really positive experiences, and I've been privileged enough to travel to a lot of different wine areas, and I thoroughly enjoyed them all.
Are there any wine regions that you still would like to explore that you haven't been to yet, that's kind of on your bucket list?
Absolutely. I think Spain is, although a little bit apprehensive, but Spain and Portugal I haven't been to, so I'd really like to do that. And then I don't know the wines from the Santa Barbara area that well, and I'd really like to explore that area a little bit better. But it's a long flight, that.
That is a long flight, and I must say I haven't really had much experience in exploring American wines whatsoever, so that for me would be definitely of interest. In your free time, when you're not making wine and traipsing through vineyards, what do you do?
Sure, I do a lot of looking after the family, I think. My wife obviously would disagree about that statement. I play a round of golf most weekends. And then, holiday-wise, I just really like to travel, mostly camping, overlanding, that kind of.
Yeah. Nature, that's awesome. So, are you into music, movies, anything like that?
I'm an absolute music ignoramus.
Oh.
I have virtually no interest in music whatsoever. I always tell the story about working in a cellar in California where they play country music 24 hours a day. And in the beginning you think you're going to go crazy, and then eventually you get used to it. So I even get used to Taylor Swift when the kids play it after a little while. But when I fly or when I drive long distances, I listen to books or podcasts, not music.
Fair enough. And then if you had to give the younger Coenie advice, so say 14-year-old Coenie, what advice would you give him?
It sounds like I've got to make a speech for my 15-year-old daughter. I think the most important thing is be true to yourself. Do what you want to do, and if you decide to do something, do it 100%. Listen to the right people, get inspiration from the right people, and maybe put a smile on your face more often.
I think that's some very sage advice. Very, very nice. I hope your daughter listens to this. If you were to go out on a romantic dinner date with Mrs. Snyman, what would you order for her to drink?
I'll definitely start with a champagne. And then for the rest of the time, she would probably drink what I drink. Because she's also a bit partial to good wine. So we're definitely more wine people. But we will, if it's a good evening, finish it with a really good brandy.
Pot still South African, I hope.
Absolutely.
What would you say, Coenie, is your proudest achievement within your career to date?
I don't really look at my career in the sense of achievements. I think being a member of the Cape Winemakers Guild is probably the best accolade you can get in South Africa. From a winemaking point of view, the Diners Club Winemaker of the Year is pretty cool. But I think the bottom of the glass says if that wine is sold out, I think that I've achieved my goal.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of looking at it, actually. And I'd like to just touch on the Diners Club Winemaker of the Year that you won. What was the wine that you entered? Tell me a little bit more. Is there a story there?
It was my first vintage at Ristenvrede. It's 2007 vintage. And if I taste that wine now, I'm a little bit embarrassed about it. Stylistically, there's still a lot of herbaceousness, but also a lot of ripeness. And for me, it's actually a good lesson that sometimes you get accolades for something that's not perfect, but you can look back at it and say, if we manage things better from absolutely vineyard throughout the whole cellar, that whole combination of factors, you can achieve better results.
Yeah, it's interesting, hey? And I'm sure you've learned so much and grown so much stylistically as a winemaker and as a person, and that ultimately also impacts on what you do in the cellar. I think it's interesting looking back at these kinds of things, I must say. If you could share any bottle of wine in the world with anyone, alive or dead, what bottle would you choose to have and who with?
That is a bit of a trick question, because the wine that comes to mind is Chateau Latour, probably 2005. But I probably need to pick something local as well.
You don't have to.
because that is still one of the great wines I've had, and from all the people that I'd like to have a glass of wine again with, Mike Horn would probably be the person to sit down and have a really nice glass of wine with and catch up.
Mm-hmm. Nice, very nice. What sort of wines do you think we'll be drinking in the year 2300?
Probably something that does not contain alcohol. If you look at the futuristic movies that's out there, there's the world of agriculture, I think, is going to change dramatically, and the way we gain nourishment is going to change dramatically, because the planet just can't sustain the amount of people. So in the year 2300, we're probably going to see something like an ice age or a superheat, and the population is going to be very few people. Mm-hmm. So it might be a very different world from what we see now.
Yeah, I think it is going to be different. I hope you're wrong when you say non-alcoholic, because then I'll rather just drink juice. What would you say, or what would be your vision for Rock of Eye in, say, 5 years' time? Would it still be the 3 wines? Would there be more wines added to your portfolio? Where do you see yourself in terms of markets? As a new brand, it's kind of, the world is your oyster right now. But if you could kind of have a wish board up in front of you right now, what would it say? What would it have on?
In 5 years' time, I would like to think that I'll still only do the 3 wines. I think the natural evolution could be that I do different styles of cab from different areas, or stylistically just different. And then, for a new brand to get a little bit more international exposure, I really need to do a lot more work in Europe and get the wines out there and get the name out there and get exposure and do exciting tastings and go exciting places.
Well, I really do hope that is what happens for your wines, Rock of Eye. Please keep an eye out for that. If our listeners want to try and connect with you on social media, where can they find you, or where can they reach out via email?
The website, rockofeyewines.com, is up and running. There's apparently Instagram that was created about 5 minutes ago, and I've myself never been on Facebook, but Rock of Eye is just in the process of getting a Facebook page, so brand new on the social media front, but busy exploring all those options.
I'm really excited to see what the future holds for Rock of Eye. I think it's an exciting brand. I think the wines are beautiful. And with your experience and your background, I think the future is bright. So I really look forward to seeing where this brand is going. And I hope to be able to see it on lots of shelves all over the world very, very soon. Coenie, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and stay warm.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack South Africa. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.